evening or good afternoon, wherever you are right now. So, um, is John here? Okay, I think he got the wrong link.
I'll meet him now. He should be here soon.
Okay.
Good evening,
Hi,
everyone.
John. Welcome. Yeah, welcome, John.
For
Welcome,
some
John.
reason, I remember I saw the link yesterday, but I'm wondering why it's no longer there. My WhatsApp.
Okay. So, can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so let's start. So, good evening, everyone. Today we're going to talk about how to administer data protection. I mean, data protection is a game changer in the IT world. Data means a lot of money. So, welcome everyone in this session. Like I have said, we're going to talk about data protection in Microsoft Azure. So, this is a critical skill for Azure administrators because data is one of the most valuable assets in any organization, irrespective of, oh, let me put on my camera, sorry. So, irrespective of wherever the location of the data, it is the most valuable asset in any organization. So what is data protection? What does it actually mean? When we talk about data protection, for example, we are talking about two big things: keeping data safe and making sure the data is not lost, deleted, stolen, or corrupted. Because sometimes we notice that people who come to steal data, they can get a whole lot of things within stealing data. So if you are taking the Microsoft is 104 examination, professional examination, this is the learning objective you need to follow, and then to try the lab and all of that. So other than that, so one of the key things, there are two big things that we need to talk about data protection. When we talk about data protection, there are two things involved. The first one is keeping the data safe. The second one is making sure the data is not lost, deleted, or stolen, or even corrupted. Because sometimes you might back up a data and do not find that data where the data is being stored. That's a very big concern. If you work as a backup administrator for a very large organization, let's say you work for Netflix. Netflix is a SaaS company, for example, and you work as a backup administrator. Your daily job is to do what? Is to back up the data day in, day out. Back up the data morning, afternoon, night. Any day, any time of the day, you are meant to back up the data. Make sure whether you're doing incremental backup or decremental, whatever backup you are doing, ensure that the data is not lost, corrupted, stolen, or even by mistake deleted. So your job, every blessed day of your life, is at risk, because once you do a backup, you are meant to test, ensure the data is in the right location, ensure the data is safe, and ensure the data is not corrupt. If the amount of data, for example, you back up is around 20 megabytes, and if the amount of data you want to back up is 20 megabytes, and you back up 18 megabytes, that's a concern. It means there are some files missing in that data that might cost you your job. So if you work as a data administrator, a backup administrator within for an enterprise, your job is on the high side, which means your job is at risk. Every blessed day of your life, you need to be 101% sure that you have the right data and the right time of the day, anytime, any day. So making data recoverable, if something goes wrong, maybe an accident, a ransomware, or a system failure, we can get your data back up. That is what Microsoft Azure is trying to tell you. So why does this matter? It matters in the cloud. In the cloud environment, it matters because when things move fast through servers, they come and go, applications scale up and down, mistakes happen. So what does this mean? So Microsoft Azure is trying to tell us that it has a built-in tool to back up, restore, and protect your important data, which means that no matter how bad the network can be, or a region or a location can be, your data will be safe with Microsoft. That's what it's telling you. So what you will learn in this module is you're going to learn about the full how to Azure backup, Azure recovery service vault. You are going to learn about all of these things within a very short time. So when you look at, excuse me, when you look at this whiteboard here, administer data protection here, it actually is actually talking about best practices. Like, let's look at this whiteboard. It shows that how Azure protects your data no matter where the data is stored. Even though your data is stored in China and your office is in Nigeria, your data is well secured. So what are we protecting from this diagram? Look at what are we protecting. I will start by explaining the each data source in simple terms. So let's look at the on-premise servers. If you look at the what we have on the screen, we talk about the on-premise servers. They are computers or servers running in your physical office. Servers that you can see. So Azure can back this up, and then not just cloud resources, they can back up your on-premise servers, right? Remember I talked about Microsoft Azure Arc. Azure Arc is one of the tools that help you integrate your on-premise environment to the cloud. Even though you don't have that big money to spend in the cloud environment, when you use Azure Arc, I think I think a little token might be taken, and then your data is still in the cloud. A replica of your infrastructure will be in the cloud. So Azure storage, look at this now. We have the Azure storage. The storage has files, disks, and blob, right? So you can see files, disks, and blobs. Blob storage. So this is where people store documents, application files, virtual machine disks, large unstructured data, right? We're talking about Azure big data here now. Those stores, they are stores in your blob storage. So when you talk about Azure database for PostgreSQL, you are talking about cloud-based database that can also be backed up automatically. When you look at this diagram here, we're talking about Azure database for Postgres servers, right? We are talking about database that are running data that can be stored in and back up automatically in the cloud using cloud-based services, right? So here you're talking about SAP HANA in Azure VM. The SAP HANA is for companies running SAP. SAP is another service for ERP and the like. So Azure supports full backup for these big enterprise systems. So we have another one here. We talk about SQL in Azure. The SQL in Azure we're talking about is a server database running inside the virtual machine. So in a virtual machine, there is what they call SQL server that is SQL server database that will be running inside that virtual machine. So Azure backup can protect it as well, right? So a simple takeaway for this, I will put into perspective, Azure can protect your data, whether it is in your office or it is in the cloud, whether it is in any location at all. Let's go over to our next slide and talk about what we have. So in our next slide here, we're talking about introduction to Azure backup. I mean, when you talk about introduction to Azure backup, we are talking about how you can learn about how the backup how you can understand basic concept about how backup come into play, what you need to understand, and why it is important to back up your data, right? So let's go to our next slide here. So talk about your learning objectives. This is what, if you are taking the AZ-104, this is what you need to practice. You need to understand that monitor and maintain Azure resources takes about 10 to 15% to implement. Within Microsoft Azure exam, you might meet this in the lab. So best bet for you, it is also good when you are taking the exams. This learning curve will help you to understand what you need to learn within the Azure environment, what you need to understand, and then to help you pass your exams in a very simple term. So what is Azure backup? When you look at this diagram, you can see that there are different backup level. One is on-premise, one is built-in backup, recovery point. There are so many things you can learn from this diagram here, right? So let's talk about each one here. The first one here we are going to talk about is the backup vault, right? Where's the backup vault? Let's talk about on-premise backup, file systems and folder. So I already discussed that. What on-premise backup will do, it's going to back up everything within your physical machine, your physical server that you are seeing in your environment. Let's say you have an office in Lagos, for example, and you have another office in Netherlands, right? And you have a physical office in Netherlands and a physical office in Lagos. You can be backing up your files in Netherlands from your Lagos office. Very true. You can be backing up all your information from the Lagos environment, from the Lagos office to your Azure, to the Netherlands office in a very simple term. So your backup service we are talking about is like this is like a big box in the middle that describes how Azure backup protects your data. This is like, think of it like a brain of a computer now, where you store, let's say for example, if you go into your house, you have where you keep your shoes, you have where you keep your phones, your computer, your cup that you used to drink water, right? So that's how a backup works. So you're talking about blob storage, file system, all of these things, they have different environments where you can keep up your backup, where you can put up all your information in a backup environment, right? So let's talk about the storage management, for example. The storage management is like, for example, it controls how and where your backup is being stored, right? A backup can be stored in any kind of location. Usually it's in a recovery service vault, what they call RSV, a recovery service vault or a backup vault. A simple explanation that you can see here from this diagram here. Excuse me. In a simple term, you will also have what they call resilience availability, right? So a resilience availability we are talking about is Azure automatically stores your backup in multiple copies to protect against hardware failure or data center failure. Let's say when we are talking about resiliency and availability, for example, if you have a data you store in your Netherlands office, right? Also, that particular data is also stored in your Lagos office and in the cloud. That is when you are using Microsoft Azure backup service, which means that if the Netherlands office got burned or hacked or something happened within their data center, it means that every information there is gone. So the reason why backup is important is to ensure that data is safe any point in time. At any point in time, data is you can continue to get your information whenever you need it. That's why the data resiliency and availability comes into play here. Then let's talk about so a simple explanation I'll put into play is Azure keeps your backup safe even if something breaks. Lagos office got burnt, Netherlands office got hacked. What will happen? It means that every information within that region is gone. So, but with the help of Microsoft Azure, it ensures that those data is safe in the cloud. Imagine if you have it in the cloud in a particular region and there is a downtime within that region. Microsoft automatically takes that data box and put it in a region that is working perfectly well for you, so that you can access that data regardless of any issue or anything you have within your environment. Another thing here we'll talk about is data tiering. So a data tiering is like tiers, different tiers of data. So a data tier is like moving older backup data to a lower cost storage, right? That's what data tiering. A simple explanation I'll put into perspective is Azure saves money by storing old backup in cheaper places. So it doesn't put them in places that will cost you money. That's another thing you need to understand. Then another thing here we'll discuss in this diagram here, in this image that you see on the screen here, is what they call multi-user authorization. A multi-user authorization prevents a single person from deleting backup, right? So when you have a multi-user authorization enabled, administering the backup environment in Azure, it means that if someone mistakenly deletes one of the or delete a file, it will or try to delete a file, it's going to prevent that person from deleting the backup so that it will keep your data safe. Remember, I said when you talk about data protection, you are talking about two things involved. Ensure data is available, data is safe, data is not missing, is not corrupt or stolen or hacked. Another thing here we'll talk about is we all know what multi-factor authentication is. So multi-factor authentication talk about adding extra protection to access that backup. It means that you can determine the kind of person you want to access the backup of, who have password to the backup vault, so that any other person cannot just go into the backup and steal information from there. Another thing here we'll talk about here from this screen here is a policy management. The reason why I'm explaining all of this is for you to understand the simple concept about what this diagram entails. So a policy management is talking about it determines how long the backup are kept and how often the backup can be run, right? A simple explanation here that I'll put into play is policies are scheduled and rules. Policies are scheduled and rules for your backup, which means that somebody cannot just go into the backup and take any information, right? It means that there will always be rules and policies to govern that environment so that people don't just take out information just like that. Why do you want to take this information? What is it used for? What do you want to use it for? Policies, rules, compliance, right? So another thing here is we can talk about is access control. That is rollback access control. Allows only authorized people to manage a particular backup when you store within Microsoft Azure, right? So one final note I would like to tell you is you can back up. Microsoft Azure Backup is a complete solution that can protect both your on-premise data and your local your on-premise data and also your cloud data, which means both your Lagos office, your Netherlands office, and the one in the cloud. It can store all the information for you in just one feature, Microsoft Azure Backup. That's what you need to understand. Let's go to our next slide here. Let's talk about how Azure Backup works through Vault and policies. If you look at this diagram here, you ask yourself, the core component of how Azure Backup actually works behind the scene. It means that, think of it like you have Vault. Vault is where the backup are stored, right? And you have policies. Policies is when and how the backups happen, right? So when you look at this image here, you're talking about a backup center. A backup center is where it is like controlling the panel for everything. Let's break it down step by step from this diagram. What is a backup vault, right? From this diagram here, a backup vault you're talking about is a vault in Azure is talking about a simple safe storage container where used to store information, backups. Think of it, you can think of it of a digital locker. Remember when I said if you go to your house, you have wardrobe where you keep your clothes, right? That's how a backup vault is. And you have where you keep your shoes, your keys, money, basic things, right? So a backup consists of so many things. Imagine if you work for Netflix and they have people's credit card information in their container and there's someone hacking into that container. What will happen? Millions of people will lose money, because once you have access to that container that has so much credit card information in there, everything is gone. People will lose millions of dollars, and by so doing, you might be sued for it. Yes. So if you're a backup administrator, it is very dangerous to kind of like be nonchalant about your job. You need to be super active every blessed day of your life, in the sense that you need to understand how the backup works. You need to understand the policies, how these policies are being applied. It means that when the backup is what is happening in the background and why this backup would happen. So another thing here we'll talk about is Vault are stored in Vault stores are in backup copies. For example, we have like what they call recovery points, a point in time of snapshot. A snapshot is like taking a replica of the entire backup in case that thing is stolen or destroyed, right? You have a snapshot of that backup image. You can pull it and have your data in place, right? So there are two types of backup. Basically, we have the backup vault and we have the recovery service vault. That is the RSV. So that's how the backup works. So with this right information, you can keep your backup. You can set up policies in your backup, how the data are being stored within vault, and then how data are being backup schedule are applied. That is, every blessed day of your life, you can set up a scheduled timer. Say at the end of every close of business, when you close from work, you can set up a backup to start from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Right? It means that once it's 5, there's nobody in the office, nothing is happening. So every information stored within different computers or region, right? The backup is going to schedule and pick those information and then put them in the container for you. When you talk about schedule backup, that's what it does, right? So the essence of this is for business continuity centers to provide a single unified management experience. So let's go to our next slide here, and we'll talk about what backup policy is. So on this slide here, we're talking about use the Azure Business Continuity Center. So the Azure Business Continuity Center is like telling you have a single pane of glass to manage your BCDR protection. We are talking about Action Center to protect Azure hybrid and edge environment, which when you're talking about hybrid, it means that you have both on-premise and cloud capabilities, right? Let me go to our next slide here and we'll talk about, so I would kind of like leave the demonstration and then move to the next slide where we'll talk about more on the backup itself. Let's go to our next slide here. So this is a learning cap for you. I'll drop it in the chat. So if you guys are very much interested in taking the lab, you can do this at your own. There's a sandbox environment within Edge, learn.microsoft.com. This will help you to kind of like, let me drop this in chat here. Sorry, 1 second. So any question, if you have any question, you can please drop your questions. Let me move to our next slide. So our next slide here, let's talk about, let's move to our next slide. Sorry. So let's talk about how to protect your virtual machine by using Azure Backup. So it means that you can, so for the learning curve, if you want to, you are taking the exam. So these are the parts where you learn and also understand how, understand each of these process, how to demonstrate within the exam, is the 104 exam lab environment to be able to take the exams. With this learning curve, it will give you about 10 to 15% pass mark if you understand all of this concept. So let's go to our next slide here. Let's explore options to protect virtual machines. So there are 3 steps of how to protect your virtual machines. The first step is snapshots. Snapshot means you manage the snapshot, provide a quick, simple options to backing up your virtual machines that use managed disks. When you are deploying a virtual machine, you can set up that virtual machine to use what they call managed disks. Managed disks means that you have information of all your backup of that computer to a managed disk, right? And you take a snapshot. I don't necessarily mean like you taking a snapshot. A snapshot necessarily means that Microsoft is going to take a replica image of that information or that virtual machine. Should in case there is the system crash and all your information is inside that computer might be lost. So taking a snapshot image means that you take a replica image of everything, including your information on that virtual machine. Should that image crash or hack or do anything, a snapshot image is there. You can recover your virtual machine through the snapshot image. That is what it means. Another step to protect your virtual machine is through the Azure backup, which we just discussed. Azure backup supports application consistent and backup for both Windows and Linux virtual machine, regardless of the operating system. It supports both of them. Another one is Azure Site Recovery. The Azure Site Recovery protects your virtual machine from major disaster scenario when a whole region experiences an outage. Let's say, for example, you have an on-premise data center, and something happened within that data center. Let's say something happened within that data center. There's a fire outage within the server room, and it affects your most of your server machines where you have informations, and you do not have what's it called? You do not have a backup system. What will happen to that person or whoever is in charge of that environment? It means that you have put the company in a big loss. Imagine having so much information in a server machine, and you do not have a backup recovery site, which means that you do not have a region where, should in case this region fails, let's say you don't have money to spend in Microsoft Azure. Remember, I said Microsoft Azure Arc is one simple key technique that you can use to have your on-premise information in the cloud. That is, you don't have much money to spend, but with the help of Microsoft Azure Arc, now it means that you can carry your information from your on-premise, your physical data center, to the cloud, like a replica of what you have in your data center to the cloud. That's what it means. So imagine if you work as a backup administrator, or you work in the server room where you back up information and all of that, and then something happened. If the server room got burnt and something happened within that environment, it means that if you do not have a backup, every information is gone, and you have put the company in a very big loss, and you have put your image in a detrimental way, which means that nobody is going to recommend you when you work as a backup administrator or a backup admin within an enterprise environment. So the snapshot is very good. So I think we'll do the demonstration. It's very easy. If you already have a VM, you can just go to add a snapshot. You can just go to create a snapshot to the virtual machine, and then what it does is it's going to keep a replica image of that virtual machine. If, for example, the virtual machine crashed, let's say some of you are doing a testing environment now, and you deploy a virtual machine in a public cloud, right? Sorry, let's say use a public IP address to deploy your virtual machine. What will happen when you deploy using a public IP address to deploy your virtual machine? It means that virtual machine is at risk because it's in a public space. Somebody might just be looking for ways to scavenge and steal information in the cloud, and then they come across your virtual machine. At that point in time, it is very dangerous. So if you don't have a snapshot image of your virtual machine, if someone hack into that virtual machine, every information is gone. So snapshot images are very important. They are very key whenever you are creating when you work for an enterprise environment. It's a key moment for you to use snapshot to back up your entire image for that virtual machine. It is fast. It is fast, simple. It is very fast and simple, easy to use. Before update or maintenance, the snapshot will automatically, let's say, it is very fast and safe to use. Before update, when to use it before you update, or maybe do a maintenance within that environment. So let's say
sorry, before, just to cut you short, not to cut you short, but
okay,
just to explain it further, right? So what are snapshots? Snapshots is basically a moment in time. It's not a full backup, but it's a moment in time. So for example, now, let's say when Microsoft released an update, and because of your server is critical, you're hosting critical information, you don't want to, sometimes when you install updates in your system, so you can install updates and your system will not come up again. You can install updates and some part of your application will stop working. So what you do, after taking a backup, you can also take a snapshot. The snapshot will basically say, hey, I want to preserve this at a particular time. Snapshot are also lesser. So what snapshot will do is basically keep everything the way they are at that particular moment. It's like taking a picture of an instance of a moment, like taking a picture of your environment. Okay, so whenever so after you do your update or you do the upgrade, if anything should happen within, let's say, 1 hour, 2 hours, or 24 hours, you notice, okay, hey, this update is messing with my server. You can quickly restore your snapshots. That's what they are. Just basically, they are basically like you're taking a picture of your environment, a video of your environment, keep the environment the way they are. You can restore back to that to that snapshot. And the beauty about snapshots, you can also restore to a new virtual machine. For example, if you take a snapshot of a VM, you can restore that to a new VM instead of restoring to the previous VM. Okay, continue, sir.
Yeah, thank you. And also for that, let me add up to what he said. If, for example, if you take a snapshot for a Windows VM, you can restore that image to a different virtual machines. That is what it means. So why does it matter? Why is snapshot matters? Let's say, for example, before, it means that the backup captures data after application and OS operating system finish writing to disk, ensuring it is safe restore for applications like SQL Server, Active Directory. Active Directory is being used to manage users and computer, web application, web apps, and file servers. So let me move to our next slide here, and then let's talk about this. So this is a simple analogy of how to create a virtual machine snapshot in Microsoft Azure. This is your custom storage. This is a VM. So a VM, now look at this VM now. If this VM, when you take a snapshot, it has a replica image of what you have in your main virtual machine. If this VM destroys, it means that you can go to the snapshot image and restore it back. Even while restoring, you can use it to create a new virtual machine, right? So if you look at this diagram here, it shows how when you take a snapshot image, this is how it is. You take the snapshot, you create it, and it goes to the recovery site vault in the cloud. So you use the snapshot taken as part of your backup job. It reduces recovery wait time, doesn't wait. It reduces recovery wait times. It doesn't wait for you to for data transfer to the vault to finish before it saves the image. And it's easy to configure instant restore, retention standard or in an enhanced method. That is what it means. Let's go to our next slide here. So look at this image here. When you set up Azure recovery sites, recovery service backup image, this is option. This is how it is. So on this site here, there's a multiple servers can be protected using same recovery vault. So this is Azure workload in Azure, Microsoft Azure, and this is on-premise in the cloud. So on this image, it shows you that you can have you can back up both your workload in Microsoft Azure and also in the cloud. So let's go to our next slide here. Oh, sorry. So when you want to create a virtual machine, first you have to create a recovery service vault. The first thing to do, you use the portal to define the backup. When they say define the backup, it means that you take snapshot recovery points of the data at defined intervals. This snapshot are stored in a recovery service, and then you back up the virtual machine is the last step. So it is 3 steps to back up your virtual machines. It is safe, easy, simple to use and to understand. I will share some of this link on how you can run a demo of how to back up a virtual machines. So let's go to our next slide here. So on this slide here, it talks about how you can restore virtual machine. How you can restore so once you trigger the restore operations, the backup service create a job tracking the restore operations. So if you look at this image here, it shows how the backup progress is being how the restore progress is being done. So it will notify you. This backup service also creates a temporary display notification, so you can monitor how the backup is proceeding or how you want to restore. So this is the image of how it is, and this one is how to back up when you want to create a backup jobs. And this is what you will see. It will tell you that your backup is pre-checked and it is valid here, and it will tick in green, and then to show you the amount of backup information that you backed up. It will give you like a progress report, kind of. So let's go to our next slide. So I'll leave the demonstration for after this slide, and we'll continue for the demonstration itself. So now I want to talk about what they call how to manage soft deletes. A soft delete here, let's say for example, a backup data is retained for 14 additional days, which means that after 14 additional days, right, the backup will no longer be there any longer. So you can recover soft delete backup items using an on delete operations. So this is how it works from this image here. And also when we talk about available for storage account content, they are available for storage accounts, containers, and file shares, and they are natively built in for all recovery service vaults. So if you want to manage your backup, you have what they call manage soft delete. A soft delete is if you accidentally delete a backup now, you can restore that backup when you activate soft delete. You can recover it within the period of, even though the backup data is retained for additional 14 days, which means you can recover it. You can recover the deleted backup items using an on delete button. You'll see the on delete button. I think we'll do that in the lab. So let's just leave that and move to the next slide here, and then we'll talk about how to implement a Azure backup recovery site.
Sorry,
okay.
Just to explain more about soft delete. Soft delete is actually very simple. The best way to see soft delete is they call it is just like a recycle bin, all right? Because past services, most times if you delete something from your system, unless you do shift delete, it goes to your recycle bin in Windows. So in Azure, if you delete a secret now in a key vault, or you delete a backup, or you have soft delete enabled in your storage account. If you have it enabled in your storage account, for example, that means if you delete a file, it doesn't just vanish. So Microsoft is giving you that same ability you have, that same recycle bin feature in Azure. That's just what it's all about. So basically give you the ability for you to delete. You can set this up delete for 14 days or 7 days. I think the maximum you can set is 365 days, right? So it's actually a good feature to have when some enterprise environments have this feature. So in case if someone mistakenly deletes enterprise data, it's not just gone, right? It's actually stored somewhere. Right, that's what soft delete is all about. So see it as a recycle bin. So to pass, you didn't go there and delete again. So imagine if someone deletes a backup, but it's a backup is still being backed up in soft delete, like it's still in the recycle bin. Unless someone goes there mistakenly to go and do shift delete, the data is still there. It's actually very important because having an issue around February where I dropped a database, right? This is one of the features that helped me. I was able to recover it because of what the soft delete feature is there. Enable the database. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So let's talk about how to implement Azure Site Recovery. This is ASR. So the Azure Site Recovery is for major disaster situations. When I talk about major disaster situation, not your everyday backup. What it does is Azure Site Recovery replicates your virtual machine, which means if this is how your finger palm is, right, it will keep another finger palm of the same fingerprint in another location, a replica of what you have in another location. That is what the Azure Site Recovery does. Like if you look at this diagram here, right, this is region 1 and region 2. One of this is the main region, the other one is the backup of the main region. If you see, there are two virtual machine, web app 1, web app 2, two application machine servers that app 1, app 2, and there are two database container that has DB1, DB2. You can see here. So it's like it will keep a replica. So here, this side here is showing you that it's a replica, and this happens over the internet. So here is a traffic. It shows the traffic of what is passing over the internet from region 1 to region 2. So Azure Site Recovery replicates virtual machines to another Azure region, or even an on-premise site, for example. So if a whole region goes down, for example, right? Let's say earthquake happened in that region, or a massive outage, or a disaster, or a flood, or a tsunami happen within that region, like the time where, let's just assume the time there's tsunami that happened in Asia. What's that country again? I can't remember. Tsunami happened one time in Asia. Let's say they have an Azure data center there, and what will happen? There will be an outage. So people who store their information within that data center, it means that Azure Site Recovery is going to what? Move it from that data center, that where that issue happened, move your information to another data center that is working perfectly, which means your VM can do what they call failover. Failover is moving to another location continue running. So if you see here, this is high availability on region 1. So when there's a failover, it means that it will come over to the site where it is working perfectly well, and then ensure that all the information from this region 1 is available on region 2, which means it has a replica of region 1 in region 2, right? So a key point, one of the key points you need to understand is Azure Site Recovery, right, keeps your virtual machine running during large-scale outage. Remember, I said tsunami, earthquake, right? It's about continuity, not just backup. Not just backup, I'll put it that way, but it's about continuity. Ensure that it has high availability. That's why you see high availability here. Once you set up high availability under Azure Site Recovery by design, so by design, this is your recovery site. Recovery site is the failover site that you're talking about, right? So it provides replication, failover, fallback, and disaster recovery drills, right? So let me put it this way. A simple understanding is a snapshot, like a quick backup. Azure backup is for full backup system for restoring your virtual machine. While Azure Site Recovery keeps your virtual machine running during a major disaster. Remember, a major disaster like earthquake, tsunami. Remember, I just said that. So that's how it is. Let's move to our next slide here. Any question before I move to our next slide? So on our next slide here, we'll talk about lab implementation of data protection. Remember, I said data protection is how to protect your data, ensure data is not missing, lost, or any sort of. So let's move to our next slide here. So this is the lab. I'll leave the lab. I'll move to the next slide. And on this lab here, I think I'll leave Nonso to take over the lab while I come to the end of my presentation. So guys, Nonso, over to you. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So any questions? Any questions, guys? Any questions? Anything we'd like to understand more? Anything you would like me to touchlight more? So for example, I can touchlight more on the Azure Site Recovery because it's something that I've used in the past. So to explain it better, just to explain, to touch more light into it, not really explain better. What Azure Site Recovery is just basically is a place for you to have is a very, very advanced form of disaster recovery. So for example, now I built my company in Lagos, right? I have my data center in Lagos, right? And God forbid, there is NSAS again, NSAS version 2, right? And NSAS version 2 came in such a way that they started cutting cables, they grounded it everywhere. They started affecting fuel, started affecting diesel. My data centers are no more running. What happens? All right. It means that my services might not be able to get to my customers. So the best way to do this is to do have a Azure Site Recovery. Azure Site Recovery means that it will repeat my whole environment. Do I have a VM? Do I have to repeat? Do I have VMs? Repeat those VMs with the IP addresses, with the applications consistently. It will replicate them to another region. So once you replicate them, what the beauty about that is that whatever happens, if this site goes down, that region will come up altogether. So if my Lagos becomes not available, it can actually automatically be available in, for example, Cameroon or North Europe or Morocco. So it's how you now have to look at what that means. I remember when I set it up then, when we planned to set it up then in UBA, it was for what we call OPP. John will know it. FEP is what handles the bank payment. So the fact that you're able to pay with your card, you're able to pay with your card, withdraw from ATMs is being done with FEP. At that time, they were having what we call issues with capacity issues with our FEP. So what do? We replicated those servers to Azure user side recovery. So how does it work? You basically have an agent running on those servers that on a daily basis replicate the files, the application data, the database data to the secondary site. So if anything should happen to the primary site, the secondary site quickly comes up. So I want to do a small lab just to explain the whole backup. I think it makes sense. So let me use the VM. That will be an option, or I can go with the storage account. If I create a sample storage account, let me see. Or yeah, I can create a sample storage account. Let me just create a sample storage account and call it what AZ104, right? So you normally do, I'll call this AZ104 lab. I can have hyphen, right? I can have hyphen, and this is already taken because storage account names have to be unique across. Remember, I will just use the first person that joined our class today, which is Helen. Just fix our name to the end, all right? So the next thing, region, talk about you can deploy to an extended region. Where do I want it to deploy? I'm going to just going to choose this. Then the next thing is the storage type, right? Do I want to do blob with data lake say region 3, or I'll just leave this. I'm just going to leave this. I'm going to leave that standard. And then redundant. You guys remember when we talk about replication, we talk about, hey, do you want to replicate to a particular region? Do you want it to be in one data center, or you want to replicate 2 more regions? I'm going to go LRS because, of course, I'm cheap. This is not a lab work. This is just a lab environment. I want to save money. So after setting this, next I'm going to go to next. So this is just basically about, hey, how do you want to access your account? Do you want to enable hierarchical namespace? So this hierarchical namespace is something funny. I ran into it recently because I was trying to set up what we call the Cloud Express. My company is trying to decommission, the bank I'm working on is trying to decommission SharePoint. So we're trying to build something that makes SharePoint. Hierarchical namespace kind of helps us to be able to do some kind of do a ACL access list down to folders. So in this lab, I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to keep this. Access tiers, guys, remember we'll talk about access tiers, hot, cool, and cold. I'm not going to worry about this. I want to quickly get to where I want to talk about save delete quickly. Public access, I don't care, let it be all available over the internet, no worries. This is the point I want to talk about, right? Enable point in time restore. By enable point in time restore, that means I can determine where I want to be. So for example, point in time restore is, hey, I want to restore 2 a.m. on Saturday 2020 on Saturday October 25th, right? Then I can enable point in time restore. Soft delete for blob, say, hey, if someone deletes this file, let's say I gave access to an intern was just messing with it, trying to learn automatically. He or she didn't know when they deleted it. So after they deleted it, maybe the intern might be scared. He will not even tell me, right? He will not even tell me. Then tomorrow I'm trying to run my backup or trying to run, so I can't see like yesterday backup. I can't see yesterday backup, and I check the blog files. I can't see it. I can't see it. That means somebody mistakenly deleted it. With soft delete, I can actually go to the deleted folder and restore it. That's what the ability of soft delete. So the minimum you can set is 7 days. The maximum you can set is what 365. 365. 365. That's the maximum you can set. You can set it to 365. Right. That's the maximum you can set. Right. So that's for blob. That's for soft delete. So you can see that's what soft delete is about. I need to enable versioning if I want to do point in time restore, right? Then if I want to do immunity, enable feed and keep all logs. So for example, if I want to see logs, right? I want to see logs of my data, who deleted who created what, right? Keep track of the modification changes. If you have blobs in your account, I can enable blob change feed, right? Then I can also do immutability, version immutability if I want to, right? Enable simultaneously. Okay, so for example, they say, hey, I cannot have this and have PTR enabled also, Right, so I'm going to skip this and just go forward. I'm going to go to next. Encryption. Encryption is something I would like to touch. Like, so I could say encryption, say, hey, do I want to encrypt with Microsoft key or with my own key? Microsoft key means that, hey, okay, Microsoft is the one keeping the access key that I'll use to encrypt. Customer key means, hey, I want to keep in charge of my key. So some banks, I'm saying banks because that's the domain I've worked with. I think 12 years of my life I spent it working on banks. And I'm still working in a bank again. I think this is the third bank I'm working on, right? Two in Europe, one in Nigeria. So, but some banks have this policy that they want to keep their own keys in the key vault. Well, in this case, I'm just going to say, hey, okay, enable key, enable because I should hold it because I don't want to start creating a key vault and worrying about all that. Then tags, review, and create. I'm just going to go review and create and try to create this. Create. This is creating. I want to duplicate the page and try to create a VM also. All right. So the next thing I want to do, I want to create a virtual machine. So I'll just come here and say virtual machine. Creating a new one. I'll put it in the same result group, so to be to delete. I'll call it AZ104 again, just to. All right. Going to do image base. I'm going to go for Linux. Yeah, I'll just leave this. Of course, I'm going to delete it immediately. So the key I want to go with Azure user. Okay, I'm going to leave this. I'm going to check all this again. Everybody, this is just tests, but I can come into this and show you guys something. Yeah. Oh, but you know what? Before I go into this, I want to show you guys this advanced. No, advanced. I can enable backups. I'm looking for the option. This I can enable. I can add additional this, but I need to enable backup. So what I'm going to do, that should be in management. So I can enable backup. If I enable backup now, it's going to what to go ask me, hey, what do I want to do? Standard backup, multiple backups per day, one every 30 days, volunteer, resilience. That's what it's going to create as part of the VM creation. And periodic assessment. I don't want periodic assessment. I'm going to leave all this. I can enable shutdown, but I'm just going to leave allow it to create a new recovery a new recovery service vault RSV, like Dominic mentioned. I'm just going to leave all this like this and just go ahead and review create and back create and let it create. So let me see. Running final. Okay. All right. So this has finished creating. Let me show this. This is the storage account. I want to quickly do something. Browse to the blob. I'm going to continue this. Adding a container. I'll call it AZ104. All right, 1 minute. I need to create this container. This is the blob, for example. Now, to create this blob now, I can come here and create a file. I can upload a file. Let me upload a file. Let me see which file can I upload locally. Okay, for a file there. Okay, let me just put this here. All right, so this is being uploaded now. All right, let me refresh this and go ahead and delete this, right? Let me see. So what I say, hey, the lecture will move to a self-deleted state. The item will remain recoverable for a retention period of about 364 days. Blob in list state are locked for deletion and will not be skipped. If an immutable object is applied to a blob, the blob will not be deleted. So I'm just going to say, hey, you can say also delete blob snapshots. There's no snapshot to configure, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete. So imagine somebody mistakenly deleted this. How do they recover it? They can come to this. Sorry, I'm going to find this and yes, yeah, settings, policy, properties. No, refresh. I'm trying to go to edit columns. Let me see. Properties, metadata. 1 minute, please. In the meantime, is the VM finished creating? Yeah, it's finished creating. Go to resource. All right, okay. This is the VM, right? VM is running. Okay, so okay, this is the VM we created. So if you want to take a backup now, you can come back up and register registry. You can come to backup, for example, click on backup, and you can see, right? You can click on backup now, right? If you click on backup now, automatically it backs up your VM. The date can activate the data, can say, hey, is the 104, 104 backup. You get backup process and back up your VM, right? That's it. Okay, so the initial backup pending, blah blah blah. Just let it rush do its thing. Need to going back to this. If I go to this container, I don't want to restore containers. Restore containers is basically restore containers. What I want to show it this. It should be here. Edit columns. Let me see. Okay. Show only active blobs. Show active and deleted blobs. Right? See, it's a deleted blob. Telling that it's deleted. Last modified this. This is actually deleted blob. So can come here and say, hey, this on delete. I need to just basically come here, right? If I refresh it again, it should come up, right? Let me see. Show active and on delete. It's taking a while. Azure Portal can be messy sometimes. Let me go back to this place. Refresh. Let me refresh the whole page. Yeah. Sometimes Azure Portal can be messy. Let me see. View versions. Let me see view versions. Blah blah blah. Yeah, I'm okay with this. Make current version. Can change it tier. Remember when we talked about tier, cold, hot, cool. Can make it hot and just save it, right? And I can come back and now let's say see. Okay, now it's restored. Show only active. Show only. Yeah, it's back here now, right? So you can restore. You can with the sub deletes. Basically, when you delete, it doesn't really go. Doesn't go immediately, right? Depending on number of days you want to keep it, right? What does that mean? It also means that if something is sub delete, that means it's not really deleted. It also means that you'll be charged for it. Remember, storage accounts, you are being charged for the number of data that you use. Actually have an active. This guy is still backing up. I might not be able to wait for it, but I have an active environment whereby I'm actually backing up. I have backup that I have like an environment running on it. I can show you guys so that I can get into that Azure environment. All right, so this is an example. An example of it. If you come to backup, right? Backup. me show you guys all the backups of the guy. Takes backup every 6 hours. That's how I configured it. So you can see this is, it takes a snapshot backup, snapshot. After it then takes a vault. So this today is the last, this guy is expiring 12/5, 5th of. So I keep 30 days data every backup. So this server is important to me. It's very important to me because it's hosting, I think I mentioned before, it's hosting some hospital data. So what I try to do is to keep data every 30 days. So, and every 6 hours, it backs up. So Azure Backup can actually help you. This is about data. That's the whole data data recovery that Dominic talked about. So you can ask me, okay, why do I want to back up 6 hours and do I want to back up 12 hours when they back up? It depends on what we call RTO and RPO of the application, the SLA of the application. For example, in some applications, they'll tell you, hey, if it's a test server, you don't need to configure backup for it. Or it's a production, if it's a production server, we'll say, okay, that particular application, which grade? If it's a application, RTO and RPO is about real-time I'm trying to remember the RPO, I'm trying to remember the full meaning, but it's all about, okay, if something happens, how long can you bear this application not being available? So if the application fails, how long can you bear it not being available? Are you going to, for example, there's some application that if it fails, we cannot afford it to fail. If we cannot afford this application to fail, like the SLA of downtime can be only 10 minutes or 20 minutes, then you backup might not help you. Maybe what you need is to do high availability. So you have an instance running in this region, you have an instance running in that region. That means if one region is down, you could fail over to another region. Like that's the SLA you signed with that application. If the instance, if it's under environment whereby what you have is the agreement you have is okay, hey, this application can go down in a day. I don't care about yesterday data, but I care about the last end of the month, last of end of EOM, last of end of the month operations. That means you need to keep backup data as every EOM data you need to back up at the end of every month and make sure data is backed up. If it's every 6 hours, like me, you need to back up every 6 hours. So it depends on the needs of that application to determine your backup, right? Okay. So guys, any questions? Any questions? Anything you would like to explain more? Anything you feel like, okay, we didn't explain it better? Any questions? Okay. All right. You have a lovely weekend and see you guys next week. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Have a wonderful
Bye.
night.
Yeah.
You too.
Thanks
Bye.
all. Bye, guys.